Welcome to the Faith and Mental Health Podcast, where two worlds collide. I am your host, DeAndrea Bolden. Join myself and others as we have relevant, engaging conversation on a variety of topics that are related to faith and mental health. So be sure to tune in weekly and also to subscribe. Did you know that you can listen to this podcast on all major podcast platforms, such as Apple, Google, and even Stitcher? You can even catch this podcast on my YouTube channel. As a listener, please know that we want to hear from you, and we hope that you would reach out with feedback, suggestions, and even ideas for guests and topics that you would like for us to include. Oh, do you mind helping me out by simply sharing this podcast with others? Thank you, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. God bless. My name is DeAndrea Bolden, and you are tuned in to the Faith and Mental Health Podcast. Today, I have an amazing guest with me today. His name is Dr. Andrew Blackwood, all the way from Canada. And so I want you guys to buckle up, tune in, and get ready to hear from Dr. Blackwood. You know how I do. I'm not going to introduce him as far as telling you about him. I'm going to let him do that himself. Dr. Blackwood, please take a few moments and let our listeners know a little bit about you.
Hey, everybody. Well, at the age of 8, I knew my parents' relationship wasn't going to last. And by the time I was 13, I ended up in court testifying why my dad couldn't come home. And it was such a traumatic event for me, losing my dad, so to speak. From there on, anxiety, depression, challenges with my own sense of self-worth, you know the deal. It wreaked havoc in my life, but by God's grace, not only am I here, but all of those events have led me to where I am now. After years of education and doing the work in my own life, I now help teens, young adults, and parents deal with anxiety and trauma. So that's what I love to do. I love to help people learn, heal, and grow. And I like to make things plain so people can understand themselves. And I really believe the road to healing is paved with understanding. So that's what I do. That's who I am.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And so thank you for taking a moment to share about yourself. And for those that are just tuning in, again, my name is DeAndrea Bolden. And you are going to be listening to me and my guest, Dr. Blackwood, talk today. And so today we are going to be dealing with the topic of, I don't even want to give it a topic, but maybe I will give it a topic because he's one of the upcoming Faith and Mental Health Summit virtual speakers. So what I need you to do, finish listening to this, but once you're done, I need you to log on to www.faithandmentalhealth.net, and I need you to get registered. Registration for the virtual portion is 100% free. And then once you get registered, I need you to select Dr. Blackwood's name and make sure that you tune into his talk. All right. So that was just a little segue, but we're going to get right back to it. And so Dr. Blackwood is going to be talking about reducing anxiety while parenting. Now, this is very interesting to me. I can say when we were going through all the submissions, we got a lot of submissions, way more this year than we ever have in the past. And when I got to his submission, he really was one that stood out. Like some people really, really stood out. And if you know anything about mental health and you know anything about anxiety, you know anxiety is the most prevalent form of mental health disorders that people are diagnosed with. Anxiety is also very prevalent in children. And one thing I always tell people when it comes to children is that mental health issues tend to look a little different in children than they do in adults. But we'll get to that later. I'll let Dr. Blackwood touch on that first. He's going to be talking about how anxiety can be reduced in both parents and child. because sometimes I know, especially in I'll say in American culture, we always have an either or mindset. Like, okay, reducing anxiety in the child, reducing anxiety in the parent. But he's like both, because anxiety has become very prevalent. And I think it's becoming even more prevalent with so many things going on, dysfunctional families, coming out of the pandemic, all the things that are happening. A lot of people are dealing with more anxiety than they have before. And I will say this, that a lot of people are dealing with anxiety and don't know it. And they're dealing with it really bad to the point of it crippling and beginning to cause them to become debilitated. But I'm going to let Dr. Blackwood jump in. And so, Dr. Blackwood, I want you to jump in. Let's just dive right into this topic, and let's talk about why this topic is important. But I want you to get into the how the anxiety can be reduced. I want you to get into the tips and keys and all that stuff. So I want you to just really dive in there and share your heart and your expertise with the people.
Sure, sure. You're totally on point here when you say that a lot of people don't realize that they're experiencing anxiety. A lot of people will know that they experience stress, and stress and anxiety feel the same in the body, right? You feel the tightness in your chest, you feel your heart rate increasing, tension in your shoulders and your back, the butterflies in your stomach, which most people recognize as feeling nervous. But what people don't realize is why they feel nervous or why they feel anxious. So, a real simple definition, because there are many factors that contribute to it, but a simple definition of anxiety is a picture of the future that is negative. Whenever you imagine something negative about the future, your body's going to pick up on it and it's going to register as anxiety. Whether that thing is real, whether it's likely, whether it has happened in the past and you're just imagining it happening again, your body does not know that this is not real. So, what we feel, we tend to believe is real, and then we act in that way. Um, Years ago, I have two daughters, and we were out in the backyard just laughing, having a great time. And suddenly, the laughter of one of my daughters stopped. And I could feel that she was not even breathing anymore. She was just pressed up against my body and she was rigid with tension. And when I looked over, I saw that there was a bee. Her eyes were fixed on a bee. And I know a lot of people don't like bees, but her fear was so intense that it scared me. The reason why it scared me is I've been working with people for years and with all different kinds of experiences of anxiety. And I've seen people be hospitalized. I've visited people in the psych ward. I've visited people who have turned to substances to cope with the degree of anxiety that they experience. So it triggered anxiety for me. I pictured my daughter unable to function in life because she was so scared. Her anxiety triggered my anxiety. And that's how it works in families, right? We care about people. And when we care, we get concerned. And when we get concerned, we tend to imagine the negative. So, what I was able to do, because I had this kind of experience, I was able to address my fears and I was able to shift that picture. And I was able to do the same with my daughter. Over a period of several weeks, I was able to understand what she was worried about, what she pictured, but most importantly, we walked through a process where she was able to feel calm and in control in the presence of bees. And just a few weeks later, she was out running in the park. She comes up to me, Dad, there are all these bees around. I'm not scared anymore. That kind of confidence, that kind of calm, that's what we all want for our children. So that's what anxiety is, how it functions. And that's a little bit about how I help people to deal with it.
I want to interrupt right there because I don't think a lot of people recognize what you did. Exposure is a technique that is used to help people that are grappling with the effects of OCD and sometimes always also anxiety. And what is done in a professional setting is they will expose you to whatever it is that is triggering you. And instead of you doing what you want to do, especially with OCD, they will help you to realize that whatever you were fearful of happening is not happening. and training yourself to respond differently and realize that you can see the thing that has you all worried and anxious and stuff like that and be okay. And so I thought that was important to put that to kind of, segue and stick that in there because um, that definitely is related to a technique that is used to help people that are struggling with things of that nature.
Hmm. And as much as we have these terms and technical terms and academic terms, these are things that we do every single day and we don't even know it, right? We either avoid or we cultivate tolerance for things. So I think it's so important for parents to understand opportunities that they have on a daily basis to really help our kids not only recognize what they're worried about, but understand what the worries are about and start to build a sense of calm and confidence in their own lives, in their own capacity.
That's really good. That's really good. I definitely think that parenting always is a teachable moment. And so, me and my husband, we have two children. My oldest being adult age, and my youngest is more that middle school age. And so, in parenting, our kids tend to silently pick up based on our behaviors and what we do and things like that. And it's basically showing them how to navigate the world, whether what we're exhibiting is right or wrong, whether it's effective or ineffective. But I want to kind of speak to the notion of um you seem like a very calm person. I could be wrong. I don't know you. I've never met him. Um, However, every parent is not as calm, especially if they have their own anxiety and mental health issues and
Hmm.
flaws and idiosyncrasies that they are dealing with. So, how can a parent that tends to flip out, how can a parent that has the patience of an ant, how can a parent that has high anxiety themselves, what are some things they can do to help themselves and to help their children?
I get that a lot, and I do get it both personally and professionally with the people that I work with.
Okay.
So I do have a calming presence, but that doesn't mean that I'm always calm.
Right.
Um, so as I walk parents through, I have an online course, and then I also walk people through the course in coaching programs, and I have what's called the parental peace framework. So the acronym spells out the modules in the course that we move through. And which is week 4 when we get into it, is all
Mm-hmm.
about creating a roadmap to calm.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is everybody's a little bit different. So we want to understand what are the factors that contribute to us, whether you call it losing it, getting angry, feeling
Mm-hmm.
anxious. We want to look at the many factors because quite often when we're anxious, we use, one of the flavors of thought, as I call them, all or nothing. So we want to find one thing to do, or one reason why we are upset, or one reason why we're anxious, but there are many factors that can contribute to that. So sometimes it is um, feeling unrested, right? Having too much going on. Sometimes we lose it at particular times of day, whether it's breakfast or nighttime, depending on the age of your kids. Life is different.
Mm-hmm.
There are seasons of life that we have that overlap. You might be experiencing menopause, you might be
Right.
grieving, you might have had 2 deaths, and all of these things are factors that if we don't attend to them, they they have this compounding effect, and they can
Mm-hmm.
build stress, they can build anxiety. So step number 1 is understanding yourself, what is going on for you, and then having a plan to address those things. um, Part of that, what always comes up, is the real physiological nature of us as human beings. like I mentioned before, when we feel anxious because we're picturing something, our body picks up on it. And we experience anxiety in the body, and it stays in the body
Mm-hmm.
until we address it, right? So these things, they build and they build and they build. So learning how to literally bring calm to your body, learning what your body needs to de-stress, whether that's exercise, whether that's massage, whether that's a bath, whether that's a walk, whatever it is, those parts are important. And then there's also the strategies around breathing and relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things factor into a really healthy plan, both physiologically, but then spiritually as well. Connecting. One of the things I do is I journal. I
Mm-hmm.
journal twice a day, morning and night.
Okay.
It's a form of prayer for me.
Okay.
So I integrate prayer and I integrate processing my thoughts and my emotions, and I love it. God wants to know what's going on in our hearts, and He wants to
Right.
share with us what's going on in His heart. So that's a real strengthening place of calm for me. And then once we do that with ourselves, and then we can enter into relationships with others in a very different way.
That's really good. That's really good. I like how you kind of slid journaling in there, and so I'm going to slide with you. And so, for those that are just tuning in, again, of course, my name is DeAndre Bolden. You're listening to the Faith and Mental Health Podcast, and this is my guest, Dr. Andrew Blackwood. And so, yes, so we're gonna just kind of slide with that and bop back to that journaling. I love journaling. I believe journaling is very therapeutic.
Mhm.
I believe it's a way to express yourself and release a lot of things that are inside of you. I'm definitely one that likes people to unleash their creativity in a healthy way, of course. Um, and
Mhm.
so whether that's journaling, whether that's painting, whether that's dancing, we have to express ourselves and we have to find ways to cope with life because life keeps happening. That's one thing I figured out. You know, you go through your 20s, you go through your 30s, you hit your 40s, and one day you wake up and realize life never stops happening. And so you have to be able to cope, or you will find yourself in a low place your whole life because life is filled with ups and downs, but you can't go down with life every time. You got to learn how to kind of stay
Mhm.
up. Otherwise, every time something hits, you'll find yourself falling apart. And so I always excuse me, I'm always suggesting journaling to people because I think it's important that we understand the root of what is happening to us.
Mhm.
What's happening to you is always a symptom. Okay, you're dealing with anxiety. Why? You're sad. Why? You're stressed. Why? I think it's always important to know the root. And sometimes in journaling and writing things out, you can sometimes begin to connect the dots. Another reason why I like journaling is because it gives you a point of reference to your old self and you can see how far you have come. I've looked back at some of my journals and I was like, man, what was I thinking? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
whoo, child, the growth, the growth. Thank you, Lord. And so you can see where your mindset is, you can see maturity, you can see growth, you can see where you've overcome. Sometimes you can see the opposite. You can see where you may have lost your footing. You may have your faith may be a little more shaky. You may not be as joyful as you were. And so I think I love journaling because it always gives you a point of reference to your old self. What were your thoughts and different things like that? And so excuse me. And so in talking about anxiety, I want you to speak a little bit more to what does anxiety look like? Because we talked about how people can overlook it, but I think you need to explain a little bit how it's so easily overlooked. And like, yeah, I know it looks like stress, and can feel like stress in the body. However, what are the symptoms of anxiety in adults and what are the symptoms of anxiety in children?
All right. Well, symptoms of anxiety in adults, avoidance, when we walk away from things, people, and opportunities that we really actually want, when we doubt ourselves, we doubt our capacity, and we settle in relationships, right? We self sabotage, right? We find ourselves in these cyclical patterns. So these are some of the social and relational kind of symptoms of anxiety. We talked about the physical ones earlier, but these are some of the relational, societal ones. Sometimes when we are angry or when we engage in controlling behaviors, that's actually because we are feeling insecure or we're feeling scared. We don't want a particular outcome. We don't believe we can handle a particular outcome. So anxiety moves us to be either aggressive or passive and controlling. So these are some of the ways that you will see it in adults. In children, avoidance looks very different. You might see it, well, you see it in adults too. Sometimes they lie, right? They tell you that they're going to be one place when they're another place. They're avoiding going to school. They're skipping. They're using substances. A lot of the times, these things are signs of anxiety, picking on other kids, right? Picking on their siblings. These are signs of anxiety. Anxiety is the hub of a lot of things because when we experience traumatic events in our lives, and trauma can be very different, whether it's the loss of someone, the loss of a pet, or the loss of a sense of safety. If you've moved 2 or 3 times, this can trigger a lack of stability. And when we feel unstable, we feel unsafe. When events and situations are unpredictable, we don't feel a sense of control. So, all of these things can trigger anxiety, and you see it in so many different ways. That's why it's really important to know ourselves. It's really important to know our children so that when we see changes in their behavior, changes in their demeanor, we can actually inquire and we can actually look at what's happened and listen for what's happening with the people in our lives.
That's good. That's good. I want to add, for those that are tuned in, I want to add a little bit to that. I want to add some of the signs and symptoms that were shared by the Mayo Clinic, because I want to give some more broad things. Because when you talk about avoidance and even hypervigilance, some people may not know how to piece that together with the other aspects of anxiety. So he talked about that tense feeling earlier, that feeling in your body that may feel like stress. So feeling nervous, feeling restless, having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom. An elevated heart rate, hyperventilation, sweating, trembling, feeling weak or tired, trouble concentrating or thinking about anything other than the present worry, having trouble sleeping. A lot of people have sleep issues. I just posted something about the importance of getting adequate sleep, I think yesterday. This is a very, very, very important one. Sometimes GI problems, gastrointestinal issues can be related to anxiety. Having difficulty controlling worry, having the urge to avoid things that trigger anxiety. That was the anxiety, that was the avoidance Dr. Blackwood was talking about. But I wanted to just share a couple of other things in there. And I wanted to hold on. I wanted to add those other things in there to give you a few more things to look for, because you may feel like, well, I'm not avoiding anything. I don't deal with avoidance, but I wanted to share some other things. But it's important to also know that you, if you think that you or someone you know are experiencing any type of anxiety, it's important that you find a professional to assess and possibly diagnose you so that you can know what you're dealing with. Okay. So he said something, and I'm going to share this. Anxiety in children looks different. I always have to emphasize to people that mental health issues in children do not typically always look the way they look in adults. So anxiety in children, he said something, anger. He was talking about picking on people. That's that bullying and that frustration. Some of these kids exploding at school are dealing with anxiety, difficulty sleeping, defiance, lack of focus. Here's the word he said again by the good doctor, avoidance. Some kids will deal with avoidance, over planning, and I know he said this somewhere within the day, but negativity. I know he mentioned that somewhere. I think it was towards the beginning. And sometimes in children, again, stomach aches and headaches. And so it's important to recognize the symptoms of anxiety in both children and adults, because some of the symptoms of anxiety can affect your body, some affect your thinking, and some affect your behavior. So there's behavioral symptoms, there's the cognitive symptoms, and there's also the physical symptoms. And sometimes I think there's even some possible emotional symptoms. I'd have to look more into it. But it's important to know those things so you can recognize if you or someone you know is dealing with anxiety. So it's important to get that help, because I tell people all the time, you can know that you have mental health issues and blow it off and try to ignore it, and you can see that sometimes over time it can get worse, and it can get worse, and it can get worse. And so the worse anything, whether think about a physical condition, if something keeps getting worse, it becomes harder to treat. It needs more to manage it. It needs more to get things in order. It needs more to get things in to perspective. And then also recognizing when you're talking about things such as stress and anxiety, it will take a toll on your body over time. Stress releases a hormone called cortisol, and cortisol has the ability to elevate your blood pressure, to increase your glucose levels. So think about it. If you have increased glucose levels and increased blood pressure levels over time, think about how that can take a toll on your body. And so it's not a good thing. It's always important to recognize and deal with anxiety and stress and things of that order. And so, Dr. Blackwood, I want you to come behind me, sum everything up, and then I want you to take the last couple of minutes and let people know how they can find you, how they can connect with you. I don't know if you've written any books or anything, if you have any products, if you have any events coming up, tell them how to register for your course. So you have exactly 6 minutes and 30 seconds to sum it up and let people know how they can find the THEE Dr. Blackwood.
Yes, yes, yes. So we've covered some serious ground here. We looked at anxiety, how it's experienced in the body, all the physiological signs and the different kinds, whether it's anger or poor sleep and things of that nature. And we looked at how it manifests itself in adults and relationships and the connection between the two. When you care about someone or something, there's naturally going to be a degree of concern, but that concern turns into worry when we imagine a negative future and we get stuck doing that. And those kinds of things just don't go away. It turns into a pattern of thinking. So it's important to get help to understand the pattern, but most importantly, to shift that pattern. So that's what I end up doing with people, helping them understand themselves, helping them understand how to change that pattern so it doesn't go from them to the next generation and the next. So I help people through a number of means. I have a coaching program. It's called the Confidence Cultivating Parent Group, and we meet every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we work through the course curriculum of an online course that I have called Help Them Be Brave. And you can connect with me through the course and through the coaching program on my website, coachdrew.ca. So there are links where you can look at the material, but you can also schedule a 30-minute consultation with me for free, where I help people figure out what is their best next step, right? So that's how we get started. I do have a YouTube channel. I'm also on Instagram, Coach Drew Can. And if I can, so can you. I am the man from Canada. I wrote a book called The Art of a Genuine Apology. and people are experiencing healing with that, bringing healing to your most significant relationships. So I integrate that into the work that I do with families, because as we know, when there is imperfect people, there will be hurt. And when there is hurt, there will be grief and there will be loss. And if we don't learn how to address that well, we carry that with us. So unaddressed trauma leads to family drama. That's how I say it, and I believe it. So when we learn how to heal that, we learn how to be the best versions of ourselves.
That is very, very good. I like how you said unaddressed trauma it deals with causes of family trauma. Or I said it backwards. Unresolved trauma causes
Leads
family
to
drama.
That's
Sorry,
right.
guys, got it backwards. I tend to do that. Okay, sorry. But
That's
no,
all right.
I don't want to
That's
mess
all
up
right.
your closing. But as you see, I'm very laid back. I'm not like a real stuffy person. I believe in living life to the fullest. And God wants us to live an abundant life, and I don't have to live like a robot. I can laugh and joke
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things like that. That's just who I am. And so yeah, so thank you so much for being my guest. I really think your topic is very important. Like, I really don't think people understand how common anxiety has become. Um, and how it is the most common mental health issue that we're dealing with right now. A lot of people are anxious. I like the scripture, be anxious for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times we are anxious for everything. And so I think this is an important topic. I definitely would advise you, like I said earlier, I'm going to say it again. He is a virtual speaker for the Faith and Mental Health Summit. We are so excited about this. Woo! Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so this is coming up May 4th through May 6th. And so the 4th through the 6th, you can listen to a variety of virtual speakers for free. We will be live in Kalamazoo for one day only on May 5th. That's actually my birthday. So I may walk around with a crown. Don't be alarmed. It's my big day. It's my birthday. El Cinco de Mayo. All right. So yeah. So we will be live in Kalamazoo on May 5th. And so I have a great lineup of speakers. They'll be added to the virtual platform very soon, but you will see by their name that it says live in Kalamazoo only. So if you want to hear me, you've got to come to me. You've got to come. Let me lay eyes on you. Let's hug, shake hands, and say hello. Come meet. Let's meet and greet and talk all things faith and mental health on May 5th. So I'm hoping to see some of you guys. I definitely want you to get registered. Please sign up for Dr. Blackwood's course. I believe there are those that are graced. God gives us all a grace, and some people have a grace to be these calm parents that just, and then there's some people, it's like, okay, ma'am, I need you to calm down, and we need to tranquilize you because you're about to send the kids back to Jesus before their time. We need to do a factory reset. And so, but I'm grateful for people like him. So I want you to sign up for his talk, see what he has to say. His is very unique. I always look for people that are talking about children and parenting. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to the Faith and Mental Health Podcast. God bless you. And yeah, like always, until next time.